Years ago, my family turned their backs on me after my ex falsely accused me of rape. They now want to make amends, but I've shown them the fulfilling life and family they missed out on. My ex cheated on me, and when I confronted her, she accused me of rape to cover her tracks. I was detained during the investigation but released due to lack of evidence. By then, my parents had disowned me, and many friends distanced themselves. Despite not being formally cleared by a jury, my parents still saw me as guilty. My best friend secretly helped me, and I left town with nothing to lose. I was ostracized and barred from my college, so I moved far away, got an apartment through community jobs, and eventually changed my name because I grew to loathe it. Starting fresh, I made new friends at university, completed a teaching degree, and moved to a distant country where I now live. I settled into a new job, found a wonderful wife, and had twin children who I cherish deeply. Her family accepted me warmly, and I began to feel like I had a loving family again. Life was going well until last night when my father unexpectedly showed up at my door. I was overwhelmed and distressed, so I slammed the door, upsetting my son. My wife, who had been supportive throughout, eventually answered the door. My father revealed that he had seen messages from my ex and her lover, expressing regret for what they did to me. He had searched for me to tell me he believed my side of the story. Now I'm uncertain about what to do. Should I? 1. Turn him away and tell him to leave me alone? 2. Reconcile with him and inform my mother? If you have a better option, please let me know. I'm stressing out hard and planning to take the day off work tomorrow. My father is in an apartment nearby, so I'll probably go to him with my answer. Thanks in advance. Comments. It's odd that he said he was doing your ex-girlfriend a favor by clearing stuff on her phone. Why would he still have contact with her? Why would he snoop on her phone? People who genuinely want to help don't break into phones. This is a red flag. The man who disowned you still has contact with the woman who ruined your life, found the truth by snooping, and somehow tracked you down halfway across the globe. Is this the chaos you're ready to bring into your family? You're right, none of it adds up. It's such a messy situation, and I hate that you're in this position. It's hard to find the right words to say to him and to answer all the questions. Advice: people who make false allegations should face serious consequences as it ruins lives. The best advice I can give is to keep him out of your life. He was so willing to dump you without even talking things out. You're already happy with your current life. Of course, you can choose to forgive whomever you want, but I wonder what his motive was to try to reconcile. Best of luck, dear, and thanks for sharing your story. T23454RP, thank you. I would like to go down the eye for an eye route and just not let him go near my family. I'm not the most forgiving person. In retrospect, he has to live with the consequences of his actions. Ballistic Pineapple, this is the first time I'm responding here, so I can't say this is good advice at all because this is really only something you can answer. This is so much all at once that was thrust upon you. I think having your father go back home will be good, giving you time to fully decompress and understand what is happening. You can always reach out to him if you're ever ready to, but having this situation forced on you is not the best. This is something that you can have control over. This is your life now, and you get to say how you want this situation to be handled. You should think about what would give you the most control to process this information and formulate a plan. You do this at your own speed and take as much time as you need. T23454OP, yeah, in the end it's going to be my choice as to what to do. I've accepted that much. My son asked me who he was a few hours ago, and I can't muster up the courage to tell him that it was his grandfather. More info: I know that it comes down to whether I want them in my life or not. I know I won't receive a definitive answer to all my questions. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around it all while putting together different answers from different people. Looking back, I'm baffled as to why they just dumped me like that. Maybe she made some fake texts, but she would have shown them to the police, and I vividly remember them saying there was little to no evidence backing her up. Not much of it adds up, and I still struggle to connect the dots. Not that I want to. It all merges into a bad dream at times. Thanks anyway, I'll get to a choice eventually. Update. Hi everyone, I'm sorry that I haven't said anything recently. I have come to the decision that I will not reconcile with my father. I simply couldn't find it in myself to forgive him. Some of you might want a story, so here is how it went down the day after. I made the post that I visited my father at his hotel and told him that I wouldn't reconcile with him or anything like that. He had tears in his eyes but was understanding. He mentioned that he told my mother about what happened and cut my ex-girlfriend off from the family entirely. As many of you questioned, I asked him why they were still in contact with her. He said that she apparently felt too guilty to let us go. I'm not too inclined to believe it, as were many of you, but it's closure enough for me. Apparently, my mother didn't take the news too well and tried to get my phone number, but my father didn't let her. I'm not sure what to really trust, given that I feel most of it is just a ploy to get me back into their lives. After they threw me out onto the streets like a rabid dog, it just makes me sick. My son did end up asking who was at the door, but I told him it was a colleague. When they're older, we're going through tough times, and I plan to tell both of them what happened to me in my past to let them know that I understand. We're all fine. It shook me up a bit, but I hope I can trust my father to keep my new life a secret. If anything else happens, I'll keep you updated, but I think the matter is resolved for now. Thank you all so much for the support and kind words. If anybody you know has gone through the things I have, be there for them. You cannot throw them to the streets. Always stay alongside them and make sure they're happy, even if they have to move across the planet to achieve it. Update 2. I was living peacefully before my father found me, which kicked off a chain of events that led to this post. I recently had an incident with my family involving them breaking a promise. It angered me incredibly, and after a lot of thought, I decided I would face them directly. I flew back to my home country and met with everybody involved, my mom, dad, brother, and even the girl who accused me. I was nervous, of course, but I was shocked when I realized I didn't really see them as family. I recognized them, of course, but I didn't see them the way I see my wife, my kids, and my in-laws. My mother started by breaking into tears and trying to apologize. I just felt disgusted by it. My father comforted my mother, and my brother was the one who kept his composure and initiated the conversation. He asked me how I was doing, and I responded by telling him to cut any small talk and that this meeting was on my terms. I told all of them that I was not looking for reconciliation and that I simply wanted closure. I made sure to tell them that I would call the police if they attempted to chase me. I asked my parents why they were so quick to abandon me, even though the police said there was no proof. They said that they made a rash decision and that seeing me in custody broke their hearts. I called them out on it, since they didn't try to stick up for me or anything. I then asked about something some people on my original post had said regarding my father looking through my accuser's phone. He said that she came to him asking him to clear off her phone of non-essential stuff, and that's when he saw the chat logs with her friends. My dad was always good with technology, so while it wasn't fulfilling, I accepted it. I then asked my brother why he never contacted me. He looked surprised and said that he did, but I just ignored him all that time. It turns out he was right. My brother had tried hundreds of times to contact me and give me money to get me off rock bottom, but he questioned why. I never answered and assumed that I hated him because of what happened. Well, as it turns out, my mother had my contacts blocked on all of her phone plans, as she paid for my brother's old phone plan, so I couldn't even receive help when I was completely lost. Then, the cherry on top was my ex. When I first asked her why she actually did it, she said that she was scared of what would happen and that she never stopped loving me, even throughout it all. She said that every session of therapy made her feel even more guilty as she knew it was all fake. She then told me that she hadn't dated anyone since, in hopes that I would come back and she could apologize, because I'm sorry would really reverse time and fix all of it. Apparently, even that was false, because my father said that he found chat logs of 3 different partners she had when I was away. My ex broke down crying and tried to hold my hand. She had the audacity to ask for another chance. This just made me spiteful, and I pulled out my phone and been showing everyone hundreds of pictures of my 2 children's milestones and good times, my family, our visits to cities, their first days of school, both of them, and my wife in my arms. I told her that this was what she could have had if she wasn't so stupid, and my parents what they missed out on for not even hearing me out. I had a moment when I thought I had gone too far, but I realized that compared to what they did to me, I hadn't. My visit wasn't all miserable, though. I met up with my old best friend and his family. They were happy to see me, and I was still grateful for them taking me in when it felt like the whole world was against me. I plan to return to the country one day to show my kids where half of their culture comes from. I won't let them anywhere near my family, though. As far as I'm concerned, my only family is my wife, her family, and my kids. I'd say it went pretty well. As some of you asked, I decided to allow my brother to fly over and meet his nephew and niece. I completely forgot to mention this in the post, apologies. I hesitated at first because my brother and I weren't really on great terms growing up, brotherly rivalry and all that. I don't have any social media, so it's understandable that he could only try my phone number, but by that point, I had another number, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. I've left the decision to go to the authorities up to my family. If they were truly remorseful, they'd report her. It's beyond me now, I might hear from my brother about it. I'm quite happy with how things turned out, to be honest. I'm truly happy with the family I've made. Now that they're all away from me, I feel really at peace. On to the next story. Story 2. I discovered my wife's affair through our kids when they innocently told me about her secret friend who played dad while I was away. I had my mother-in-law help me catch them in the act. My ex-wife and I were married for 7 years. We were madly in love, and I never thought a day would come when I'd share my heartbreak story on this platform. My wife and I were ex-colleagues at work before I was transferred. We both worked at the same organization and were pretty close, but our closeness intensified after I was transferred to head a new branch of our company in a different state. She was one of the most intelligent workers we had, which attracted me to her. When we worked in the same office, I didn't have any feelings for her. I just knew I liked her, and she was one of the people I used to talk to regularly. Weeks after I was transferred, I can't explain how it all happened, but I found myself talking to her every day. We continued this way for months until I asked her out. As she already liked me, she did not need to think about my proposal like other girls would. She just said yes, and we dated for 2 years before marrying. In the span of 2 years, I resigned from the company I worked for. Something happened there, and I was forced to leave. Luckily for me, I found another job in our state shortly after the office incident, and I moved back. This second job was way better than the first, but the only disadvantage was that it required me to travel regularly. In the first year of our marriage, my wife and I had a daughter, and in the 4th year, she gave birth to a boy. Becoming a father was one of the best things that happened to me, and I sacrificed so much to ensure my wife and kids were comfortable. My wife was also a hard worker, so together we joined forces and raised our 2 beautiful kids. We barely had any issues, and even if we did, it was nothing we couldn't fix. Aside from being a good father, I tried my best to be a good husband, and I would occasionally treat my wife to special dinners or whatever she wanted. Most of the time, we would send the kids to her mother's house and spend the whole weekend together. We did this occasionally because I didn't want us to get overwhelmed with making a living and forget to enjoy our marriage as we grew older. We also tried as much as possible to go on vacation every year, even if it was just for 1 week. I'm sharing all this to show that I played my part in being a good husband. I treated my wife like a queen with all the things I did for her and our kids. I didn't expect her to stoop so low as to do what she did, even though I knew she was earning a decent amount. We split the bills 60-40, and I took care of most of the expenses. If anyone sacrificed the most in our years of marriage, it was me. I supported her in both good and bad times, including when she had issues with her mother for 2 years. During that time, she didn't let her mother see the kids. There was absolutely nothing I didn't do to support her. If she wanted something that I wasn't comfortable with, whether it was too expensive or unnecessary, I would get it for her to make her happy. All this while, I thought I was doing what every husband would do for his wife and family, but I didn't know I was wasting my time. I wouldn't have even known my wife was cheating on me if things hadn't unfolded the way they did that day. I was supposed to go on a very important business trip, but somehow it got canceled by my clients the same day. Since I had been traveling around the clock, I barely had enough time to spend with my kids. Earlier that day, the agreement between my wife and me was for me to drop the kids at her mother's house because I had to pass through that road to get to the airport. However, after the meeting was canceled 2 hours before my departure, I decided not to drop off the kids anymore so I could spend time with them. We played various games together, and it was so much fun. Meanwhile, I made a deal with the kids: if they could catch me in our tag game, I would give them ice cream. Giving them ice cream meant I would be breaking their mother's rules of having ice cream twice a day, but we promised not to tell. As the kids were eating their ice cream, I noticed they were whispering something to each other. When I asked what it was, they made me promise not to tell my wife. Once they said that, I was curious and promised not to tell so they could open up. To my greatest surprise, the kids told me my wife had a secret friend, and whenever I traveled for a business trip, she would invite her secret friend over to pretend to be their dad until I returned. They even went into details and told me my wife's secret friend would spend the night in our room with my wife, and if I was coming home on the evening of a particular day, my wife's secret friend would leave early. When they said this, I was sure they didn't make it up because this wasn't the kind of thing children could invent on their own. They told me because my wife's secret friend always gave them ice cream in secret too, and they would all promise not to tell their mom about it. I was so livid when I heard that a stranger was coming into my house to feed my kids, and my wife led him to avoid exposing what I found out. I asked my kids not to say anything to their mom, and they promised not to. Later that evening, when my wife returned home, I tried to subtly gather information from her, but she was tight-lipped, so I gave up. That night, while she was asleep, I went through her phone but found nothing. I decided the best approach was to catch her in the act. A couple of days later, after my kids confided in me, I lied to my wife, telling her I was going on a business trip and would be gone for 4 days. She went grocery shopping that morning, taking the kids with her, leaving me at home to prepare. I told her I wasn't driving and would be taking an Uber to the airport, and she believed me. About an hour later, she returned from shopping, and soon after, a man arrived at our house. From the basement window, I watched as my wife greeted him with a passionate kiss before inviting him inside. She thought I was away on my business trip and had no idea I was hiding in the basement. As soon as she and her guest were inside, I called her mother and told her everything. I asked her to come over and help her daughter pack her belongings because our marriage was over. After ending the call, I waited. Shortly after, I heard a car screech into the driveway. Her mother jumped out and began yelling and screaming. I'm sure my wife was stunned to see her mother, but her shock was nothing compared to her reaction when she saw me come out of the basement. She was left speechless, unable to find words. I was so disappointed that I didn't even confront her or her lover. I simply told her to leave the house before I took the kids out so they wouldn't witness their grandmother tearing their mother apart. Later that week, I arranged for a paternity test for my children, and the results confirmed they were mine. I then explained to them the terrible things their mother had done by bringing someone else into our lives. They may not fully understand the situation, but at least they know why I divorced their mother. I hired a strong lawyer who helped me secure custody of my kids. Now, they are my only focus, and any future marriage will wait until they are older. Their mother has tried to send them to plead on her behalf, but I've made it clear to them that this will not change anything.